Welcome to another episode of Angels, Positivity, and Love. Amazing guests from all over the world with incredible insights, incredible experiences, and usually a pretty big foundation from which they help others experience more love, let go of being human, having to do the adulting thing, and so on. Many are healers, New York Times, or I should say Amazon these days, bestsellers. All walks of life, though, many different backgrounds. I'd like to just do a quick public service announcement. June 1st, we went to 3 shows a week this year, and that's booked, I think, all the way through 2024. So that's 150 plus episodes. Again, amazing guests, lots of fun. And speaking of which, from Arizona, joining us, Sue Frederick, incredible background, ordained Unity minister. She's spoken at Omega, many other institutes and places, done a lot of shows. She's a show host herself, author of 11 books. Shared death experiences, and much more. She's an inspiration to many, has helped many people in her time. I'd like to just welcome Reverend Sue, or Rev Sue, to the show. Thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you talking about my favorite subjects, including the angelic realm.
Yay. Could you give a quick overview for folks so they understand how far back this goes? It's been since childhood. You've had a sense of intuition and so on, right?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in New Orleans, and that right there, I think that New Orleans is a city that believes in the invisible world very more than probably any other city. I mean, they have such an ancient ancestral background of voodoo and all sorts of arts and spiritual alternative viewpoints, you could say. And my mother was French Creole, so she was the youngest of 12, and they all had dreams that came true, and knew when someone they loved had crossed over, and just she gave me that genetic coding of being able to have a very powerful intuitive part of me. So I grew up with that, and plus I was raised Catholic, so I saw angels and Mother Mary in the church, and I thought that everybody did. And so really my life is more about my childhood learning to be on the physical plane and to ground myself here, because I just didn't I didn't understand how this world worked here, the physical world. I was very weird and different, and dreams came true from the time I was a kid. So my lesson for the first 20 years here was how to act a little more normal so I can fit in a little bit and make a living and get through school and all those things people are supposed to do here.
Oh, I love that. Beautiful intro. And I think I'm still trying to do that at year 56, try to fit in. Can you mention, you've got a beautiful background behind you, and if you don't mind leaning, just so people can see it, it's a book cover, if I recall, and also it's very much related to, is it a shared death experience?
Well, no, this one was an out-of-body experience. I've had a lot of out-of-body experiences. In fact, really what's true is that it's so easy for me to leave my body that, I just get a little fever and I'm out of here. And I'm always at night in my dreams leaving and going into the higher realms. I think we all are, but I think I just always remember it and am aware of it. So in 2013, I'd been teaching a grief shifting workshop at Kripalu. Maybe you've been there. It's one of those great spiritual retreat centers in the East Coast. And I was helping everybody connect to their departed loved ones, and big group, and it was wonderful. I love the work. But after doing that for 3 days and flying from the East Coast back to Colorado, where I lived at the time, I was worn out, and I got sick, and I got this really crazy high fever and really bad cough. Now I know that it was pneumonia. It was more serious than a flu. But at the time, I was at home just trying to heal myself. And one night I was taken out of my body. It went on all night, and it was a visceral cellular experience where the angels held me in space to look at planet Earth. And my husband is a graphic designer, and he created this design to illustrate what I was talking about. they showed me planet Earth and they said, "Do you see all those light beams shooting up?" And I went, "Yes, what is that?" And they said, and by the way, the angels who talk to me are primarily female, and they have the sweetest, most loving voices, and they were saying, "Sue, this is how it works, that there is always more light than darkness, no matter how things can look on earth. And that light always overcomes the darkness. And that every time a human on earth opens their heart and loves another person or remembers that they're a divine being, a light shoots up from their consciousness and illuminates the darkness and sparks other people and souls awake into the light." And they were showing me it was a dynamic. It was like a river of light moving around the world, filling in all the little dark corners. They said, "You don't have to worry in these coming years when things might get scary or different or challenging in the world. The light will still always be winning. And you have to be one of the voices there that teach that." And I remember at the time, like 2013, the world didn't seem so bad, and I was like, okay, but they were at it all night with me, like holding me and whispering so much stuff into my consciousness. When I woke up in the morning, I was trying to make logic sense out of it because you can't put those things into words. And so I finally got my laptop in bed and just started writing because I've always been able to sort of channel it through in my writing. And that became my most recent book, called Through a Divine Lens, where you see the world or your life through that soul perspective and remember that the light is always winning and you are part of the light.
Truly beautiful. And it's funny, the graphic that your husband did really reminds me, and this is just something from childhood. I love movies, I kind of love TV, and I know a lot of people knock TV, and I know everything is kind of a balance, but I just feel like there's so much creativity that way. And at the outset of movies, when the studio does its special announcement before a film, like Universal has one, there's if people remember is it a Pegasus, the
Yeah.
winged stallion flying towards us when you're in a movie theater or at home. But Universal, I was just watching it 2 days ago, and I swear that's what I saw. And they've shown it for 30, 50
Wow.
years where they'll show the continent, the landmass light up, and then beams of light shooting up exactly like that. And so if
Wow.
anyone watching just happens to be putting on a movie or you want to just go check it out, it was Universal. And that was the first thing when you mentioned it that way that popped in. Can you just You've done soul regression therapy, numerology, kind of divine healing, listening on behalf of others. I could go on and on and on. What's the most fun you've been having lately helping people? And I know, the spring maybe isn't the best time to talk about helping others right now, but what traditionally in the last year or so has been the most fun for you to help others with?
Uh, there's a lot of questions in that right there, but let me just try to hone it down and just say that Um, right now, the thing that I'm most excited about is feeling so completely reborn from my own health crisis that I went through and came out on the other side with a completely new soul contract for this lifetime. And I'm in my 70s, so that's a big deal. Now I'm feeling reborn and ready to really go with my work. And I've launched this thing called the Angelic Ministry Ascension Program, where we're doing a lot of work about finding each of us our own niche as angelic workers on earth and what we're here to hold our light up for specifically, and then how to react to world crises from the angelic perspective. And I know that my soul originated in the angelic realms, and souls come from many different places, including other galaxies. But I know that mine came from the angelic realm, and I hadn't spent a lot of time on earth. And that's also why I had such a hard time at my childhood figuring out how to play human here. Because I thought I saw the best in everyone. I saw love all the time. I just kind of loved everybody, and quickly was shown, oh, that's not how people behave. This was the 50s too. I mean, those were really the dark ages. And but this angelic idea that some of us drop into earth and go, oh my gosh, how am I going to stay here? And try to figure out how to make a purposeful career. You can't have a meaningless career when you are awakened spiritually, and when, especially if you've come from the angelic realm, because you have this huge passion to want to help humanity evolve, to help consciousness go to the next level. So for me, my recent health crisis was showing me that even though I've done sacred numerology intuitive sessions with thousands of clients for 30 years and studied it since 1980, that it was time for a bigger shift here, and that's my angelic ministry Ascension Program, and doing more of that. But I still do my sacred numerology, because I do numerology different from any other numerologer. It's all about spirituality. And so I can talk about your path, by the way, whenever you're ready.
Sure. I'll be happy to be a guinea pig, but we'll find a better phrase. I'm happy to be an ecstatic volunteer to share more love with the audience. You've been given my birthday, but you might not have to put that on the air to do the
Right.
rest. Okay, cool. People do give their birthdays, though, to Sue to get this
Yeah.
done. Okay.
Actually, if anybody wants to know what their soul path is according to my numerology system, they just go to my website, suefrederick.com, and there's a soul path calculator on the nav bar. You just click on that, you input your date of birth, and it tells you exactly how I calculate your birth path. And then I'm going to read yours, for example, without giving away your date of birth. Um, you are the Pisces 5. And what I love about this, by the way, is, oh, it's just so interesting to me, because one of the great loves of my life was a Pisces 5. And he was so in tune and in touch with the higher realms that he really struggled. He was born the same time as me. And so in the 50s, he was given the message, hey, you're a boy. You've got to be strong. You can't cry. You can't feel things. He was so sensitive. And so in his journey, because of that Pisces 5, which means you came in, Michael, to be wide open-hearted, completely connected to the divine realms. And your challenge is to be grounded and real in the physical world and successful. Well, my beloved struggled with that. I met him at the sweetest time when we were hippies in the early 70s, and we created a little magical life together for many, many years. But then as people break up in their first Saturn return, their late 20s, when they start really asking the big questions, we broke up. And he went on with addictions because his sensitivity, it was like there's a fork in the road for the Pisces 5. It either takes you down the path of addiction because you're so in the other realms and so sensitive and you don't know how to be here. And addiction gives you a brief momentary sense that you're in a higher realm, but it doesn't work in the long run. Or you choose spirituality and alternative viewpoints, and you've done that. That's your beautiful path of survival. And Jeff and I used to always argue about spirituality. He just he couldn't believe in the things I believed in. And so he learned from the path of addiction, and that Pisces 5 that you're on is always about learning through intuition, sensitivity, and through the body, learning passion through the body, health challenges through the body, addiction through the body. But you've clearly stepped to the highlight side of your path. And then you're moving into second Saturn return, which will be when your work in the world really explodes, because you're on path, you're doing what you came to do. And this year, 2024, for you is a 7 personal year, which is a deeply spiritual, intuitive year. So you must be very connected this year, and hopefully writing as well. It's a really good year for you to write. So the other thing for you to remember is, when you are moving through this Saturn return, there will be choices in the next few years of, do I go in this direction or that direction? Always remember that the more alternative and spiritual and out there you are, the more you're doing what you came to do. You never came to fit in or be conventional, as I'm sure you know by now. So that's a brief little way that we look at our soul paths.
Oh, that was lovely. And it definitely feels okay to go out into left field. Like, I'll make a joke about it. Outstanding in my
Yeah.
field with a lot of sunflowers. Um, and I thank God for running too for 42 years since I was 14. That has
Oh,
just been
yeah.
a form of grounding and just, competing and other stuff or just running
And
for fun.
using your body to keep you in this realm.
That's about it because I do not relate otherwise. I don't mean to say it that way. I'm always working on it. I'm always trying to allow it's one thing I'll mention, and you probably have to go through this is um you can pick up on people and where they're at on a consciousness curve and it can shift. You could be
Mhm.
here one moment, wait
Right,
6 hours and you're totally open again, or the other way around. And
right,
same for me. Um, we're fluctuating all the time, but if you can avoid judging, everyone is simply where
right.
we are. It's what you said earlier. Everything is good exactly how it is. And
Yeah,
it's how love allows us to appreciate the contrast out there. Maybe
right.
that's something you could talk about. Can we just do a quick checklist? Angels exist, right? Yes, no.
Exist. They're more real than the physical world, this little
Yes.
illusion that we're having at the moment.
I love it. And then is it also, here's another just, easy yes, no. Love's the fabric of the universe.
Oh, well, absolutely. I think that's a line from one of my books even.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
I heard
the
that from angels. So,
oh, well, there we
uh,
go. Yeah, I think that's in my I See Your Soulmate book or something. But yes, we live in a universe that is that is powered by an all-loving, unconditional love force that we like to name. We name God or whatever, but it is a force of unconditional love that runs this universe and flows through all of us, including you and me and everybody listening and watching. We are all part of that God force of unconditional love,
hmm.
all of that light. And the minute we try to bury that and focus on the earth realm, the human parts of us, we get very, very lost. And the minute we kind of open our hearts and start looking beyond the physical for truth and answers, that's when we reclaim the divinity in us is always there, but we just remember it and act upon it more powerfully whenever we focus on the invisible realm and that it's more real than this real realm.
Can you talk to everything's energy, consciousness flowing, and it just depends on how much you want to pump the brakes a little out of thinking and pay attention more, whether it's yourself, situations, life. And I'll say it a different way. Love's a constant or love's everywhere. Open your eyes to see love. But can you talk to us about the difference in flows kind of when you're up here versus when you're down here? And I guess it would be unconditional love, awareness, no limits, timelessness versus time limits, thinking, conditionality, blah, blah, blah. You have a patented Sue Frederick way, though. You might be able to explain this. Can you explain the difference between those two areas?
Well, I call it, this is what my book, Through a Divine Lens, is. Either we're looking at the world through the human mind, the ego mind, and that's all about survival, physical survival. The ego is simply here to help us stay alive on Earth, basically. And so it has no higher consciousness to it. But our soul drives the boat here. Our soul is in charge. Our enormous soul has squeezed part of itself into our tiny bodysuits and is driving the car. However, that scary survival voice called the ego or the monkey mind will constantly be coming in and going, well, you better worry about this. Or who do you think you are to think you could do that? Or nobody's going to ever love you. You can't be successful. Those are all the human mind and the ego. And they're just trying to tell you to play it safe, to kind of follow the rules and stay alive, don't take any risks. Meanwhile, over here you have your soul, your flow of God consciousness through you going, you're a powerful divine being who came here on purpose to live to your highest potential and make a difference in the world. Remember it, act upon it. Love is the only important thing to remember here. Love of yourself and love of this gorgeous, all good, all God universe.
Hmm.
And those two voices battle themselves constantly. In fact, every time we face a crisis or a challenge or a dark night of the soul, by the way, we have many in a lifetime. So hopefully, if anybody's listening, they have experienced a couple, because they're our greatest gifts of awakening. I always work with a lot of grieving people because grief has been my great awakener. It happened in my 20s. My beautiful love husband, Paul Frederick, died of colon cancer in my arms and shattered my reality and sent me seeking this higher spiritual perspective. And so I thank him for that. And I thank grief for breaking me open. But there's many other ways we have that awakening, including health crisis, which I guess I had to experience everything in this human lifetime. My friends have told me, Sue, I guess you decided when you came in this life, you had to check every box of experience so that you could accelerate your growth. Because I've been the healthiest person in the universe. After Paul died, I was a health writer for big magazines, natural health, all of that about living healthy, preventing illness. And I'm in my 70s and I'm incredibly healthy. And then all of a sudden in March, I was almost died, and I was diagnosed with colon cancer. So the human mind wants to say, oh, well, that's a tragedy. That's a
Mm.
terrible thing. And gee, that's what happened to Paul. And now you're going to go down that dark night. And my soul instantly, because I'd already developed the habit of doing this, my soul was going, oh, wait. This is a gift for you. Just pause, be open, surrender to where it's going to take you. There is something really, really good in this for you. And so in the last few months, I met with my guides, my angels, and my beautiful girlfriends and talked about all of my stuff through the soul's lens. And I'm quite clear that I healed some remaining trauma. I guess I wanted to heal everything in this life, but by going through Paul's illness my way, which was completely held by the angels, completely different from the way Paul suffered, and then a diagnosis now of no cancer. And it's just such a miracle. And I realized I've healed a certain cancer trauma that I'd carried with me since, well, when I was 30. Paul died of cancer, and then Chrissy died of cancer back to back. So, and then my father. So I had this cancer trigger that I carried with me. And my reaction to it was, oh, I'm going to live the healthiest possible life and heal myself with vibration and spirituality and healthy living. And I did all that. So the universe goes, well, maybe you didn't have to be so afraid of it. Maybe it's just a soul wake-up call. Why don't you try it?
I love it. Or I should say, wow. Um, can you talk to us about how simple everything really is? And there's thinking, and there's thinking something that's the only block to experiencing more love being here. And I've got a quote for you from angels. You can be happy now in this very moment without a single reason. And
Oh, yeah.
that defies all our logos, science, what's going on over in this country, that country, the political party, this American state, or our state of existence. Can you touch upon that basic concept?
No, it just has to do with which of these voices you're going to listen to in your head. I mean, the mind is never going to let you be happy. And we grow up in our culture here paying homage. Like our God in the Western culture is the left brain logic mind. That is a small part of who we are and what's going on here and why we're here. And it's a very small part of our power and our potential. And yet we have paid homage to it for, I guess, as long as you would call it the Industrial Revolution, or all these, paying homage to our advanced world, which actually it's not at all. All of this homage to the left brain logic world has created our depression, our angst, our anger, our hatred, all of that negative stuff, because it just feeds us a completely baloney view of the world, that we're all in it alone and we have to compete for our safety and our health and our life and all, and there's never enough to go around, right? And the minute you let your mind start believing in that world and taking you down that path, and most people have to go through that at some point, you realize it's the rabbit hole of all rabbit holes, and it doesn't take you anywhere good. And so when you decide, I'm going to listen to a voice that's really loving and really empowering and makes me happy and says, hey, this is a beautiful universe and it's filled with light and it's filled with magic and love. And I'm going to live in that reality, that world. Now, the hard part is we're still on the earth. So we have to have money. We got to have a place to live. So how do we merge our knowingness that this is an angelic driven, miraculous, energy fused universe with how do we play the game of this culture and survive? That's the reason we come to Earth, to figure that out, but not to submit to this horrible left brain logic point of view that doesn't serve us. And so all of us have to decide, hey, am I going to be standing for the miraculous universe of light and love? Because now in human consciousness, it is the minute to choose that, because we have to take our stand. And all of us are being asked, are you with the light? Because we've got to tip consciousness now into the light. And the only way we do it is by each of us holding our light higher than ever, believing in this all good, all God universe more than ever, trusting the angels and guides to lift us up through it. And if we can all do that, or most of us do it, we're going to get through this time in our evolutionary history and change this universe in a radical way for the better.
And how simple is it for folks, again, just to take a breath, smile, relax? There's a million ways into the heart, but there's like 10 million ways the brain says, no way, Jose. Can you just, again, what's the simplest way you like to remind
Well,
people to just,
simple as anything from, hey, I'm grateful for the sunshine in that window over there. Ah, suddenly my heart goes up a few frequencies of love. Oh, wow. I'm feeling unconditional love for that little child that I just saw on the sidewalk who was so cute. Oh, instantly my heart is going up to a higher frequency here. But the best and easiest one is authentic, open-hearted humor and laughter. And even the night when I got my colon cancer diagnosis and knew that I had to go through surgery, and I was really in my dark night of the soul, like, really, am I going to have to re-walk this terrible suffering journey that my first husband, Paul, went through? I knew that I had to send everybody home, all my family members, and be alone in that hospital room that night and laugh, because my family was kind of devastated, like they weren't in a funny mood, and my friends were all very shocked, and because they had never felt, they said they never felt that in me. And so they were all in shock, sent them all home. And I got out my little iPhone and put on my favorite movie comedies. I've got a huge collection of them. I call it movie therapy. And alone in that hospital room that night, I laughed my butt off for hours and hours with my favorite comedies. And I'll give a plug to one of them for anybody who's, few people have seen this movie. It came out around 2009. I think it's one of the greatest movies ever made. It's called Ghost Town, and Ricky Gervais is the star,
it
Tia
does.
Leone as well.
Yeah.
And it's really about a man who has a near-death experience and suddenly changes. He can see departed spirits, he can see the other realms, and how he integrates that, but mostly how he helps these spirits give healing messages to the people on earth who are grieving for them. So it's a gorgeous movie, but he makes it hysterically funny. So if you're ever facing a dark night of the soul, find a movie like that and laugh and laugh and laugh until your heart opens right back up and you know there's a way through this.
Oh, it's beautiful. Ricky Gervais was a dentist in that one. Greg Kinnear's in it.
Right. You've seen it.
Yeah, and Taya Leone, I got to go completely on a tangent here. Her real last name is Pantaleone because her dad is so proud of her. Was an attorney at one of the law firms I used to work at in New York. I'll leave it at that. I got to be down the hallway from him, and I
Oh
just
my
get to hear
gosh.
stuff. But this would have been like end of the 90s, 2000. Let's go on another segue. I do this on every show. I blow a little bit of sage to the screen. People at home, time and space,
Mm.
she'll tell us this in just a second. It's not what you think it is. Don't get hung up on it. I mean, obviously, pay your bills, get to your appointments ahead of time. Pay attention to the traffic carefully. But this sage can reach you, and it could be 2028 and we're watching this interview. You can smell sage smoke. If you're hyper intuitive, you might smell it when I light it. Just ask angels, the universe, to make it nice. You're using your heart to do the Zen thing, smelling without smelling. Just it's energy. Just connect. You're all kind of connected as it is. But if you want to put your hand out and feel the tingle that way, try too hard, it'll be on your toes. But leave your eyes on the sage smoke if you need it. A lot of Americans like to close their eyes and do it. Catch the sage, but if you're gung ho or crazy or wild, or you're like, hey, why settle for 1 + 1? It's 11. Let some flowers come in, or your favorite ocean you haven't been to, but you want to go. Let angels, the universe, bring you that ocean smell. And Sue, what are you getting in Arizona right now? Just a touch of sage?
Well, yeah, it's funny because I've always had extraordinary off the charts olfactory abilities. In fact, when I write my books, I receive scents that guide my writing and my storytelling. I know that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but I smell my way through life. And sage has been a very significant scent for me. I lived in an ashram for a while where it was a very big part of our daily routine. And then I taught mountaineering in Colorado in the 70s, and artemisia, actually the sage you're burning,
Mm.
is also called artemisia. And I would hike along the mountains with the group I was leading and pick pieces of that sage and breathe it in as I was hiking, and we were taking them up rock faces and climbing 14,000-foot peaks, and I'd pass it back along the line for people to inhale it. And it's a great frequency shifter.
Yeah, and so it was rock climbing, and again, mountaineering. You were an instructor in the past.
Yeah,
Incredible. And
in the
you
70s.
did get the sage for the audience to hear it. You caught the sage. Did you
Yeah,
get anything else flower wise? And it's okay if you didn't. Flower, beach, anything else?
jasmine.
Yay, awesome. Now, look, you've got 11 books out, something like that. I may be off by one or two. The point on this is if you were just going to steer folks to one book, which one should they start with?
I think the Through a Divine Lens, because it gives them the overview of how to choose these two different viewpoints that we're talking about. And that's the thing. I mean, as long as we're on earth, we're making a choice every minute. Which voice are we listening to? Which viewpoint are we using of life? And the minute we hit a crisis, we've got to choose that divine perspective if we want healing, if we want grace, if we want to be able to move through the crisis. That book teaches you the techniques to do it. And in the back, it also has numerology, the way I teach it and the way I do it. And also, you can go to my website, suefrederick.com, and you can learn more about my numerology and my classes. I'm always teaching group classes on sacred numerology.
Yay. One more quick tangent. You were mentioning you had folks pass around you, which at the time felt like an obstacle or a challenge, or obviously there's emotional roller coasters people have to go through. But in the end, that also helped with your own expansion, did it not?
Well, those are great gift experiences when we get past the human pain, because, for example, when my husband Paul died, not only did he come to me before he died, he was in a coma, and I was so upset that he was in a coma because I promised him that he would die in my arms at home, and we had a big medical crisis, and suddenly we're in the hospital, he's in a coma, and I'm so upset, and I fall asleep on the floor. And he appears to me instantly and says, I'm not trapped in that body. I don't know what you're doing on the floor. Get up, come over here and hold me so that I can cross over the way we discussed. And I woke up and went, oh my God, he's not trapped. And I kind of came back to myself then, and I walked over and held him. And he took suddenly a beautiful, peaceful sigh, like to show me the soul is in charge of the exit, no matter how it looks on the outside. And he took this beautiful, peaceful sigh and lifted out of his body and showed me his spirit as he lifted off to go in the mountains. And then that night, he came and was in bed with me. I could feel his body completely next to me. And then after that, he was constantly lifting me up for 3 to 4 weeks to show me the perspective we get when we leave the body of the divine realms. I saw the complete divine order in everything that happens on earth, down to the smallest detail. Like, for example, if you're taking vitamins or pills and a pill or a vitamin falls on the floor, it could be that divine order. Actually, I was shown that's usually saying you shouldn't take that pill. You don't need that.
Yeah.
And I learned in that moment that we're always guided here, that we're always held by the higher beings and shown which way to go and how to move through a challenge. And we just have to trust it. That's the biggest thing we have to learn, is trusting in the goodness of this universe. So that's, I guess, the book that would help people do that.
And there's a big difference between like indigenous tribes or past cultures on the earth and today. What you said earlier about society, or you better not, or you better stick to the crowd, or the right way to do things. Can you just talk to us about the intuition concept, or divine knowledge, or just universal flow? I mean, there's a million ways to call this. I call it just slowing down a touch, hitting that brake pedal a little. The rat race is really up here. It's not the external stuff. Can you pull away long enough to pay attention to what is really going on? How do you, again,
I,
remind folks to be
yeah, I see
present?
it differently than that. I see it doesn't matter if we're in a traffic jam in the rat race, it doesn't matter. Our soul is showing us a different view of it. And our soul is saying, hey, that person in front of you in that other car who you think is driving terribly, wow, that's a grieving mom who this is her first venture out of the house. And she's so fragile and broken. Send her a lot of love right now and protect her with your car. Those are the intuitive kinds of messages that we can get 24/7, no matter what rat race we're in. And we just have to trust it, because we each have a right brain and a left brain. The left brain is the logic mind. The right brain is that pure connection to divinity, to spirit, to intuition. Talking completely not blocks out that intuitive voice. We have to learn to listen. We have to learn to shut up and be quiet. This is why the Eastern traditions teach such beautiful silent meditation, which I'm a huge fan of, because once you quiet the mind, quiet the voice, quit talking, you're so much easier to lift up out of the logic mind, lift up out of the human viewpoint.
I'm going to give you three random quotes. You can respond to all three, whatever just pops up randomly, and just let it launch you or propel you forward, or address it in a specific quote. A lot of these you may have heard before, but they'll be from all over. Well, this one is kind of a new one, but it makes total sense. An angel named Millicent said, "Compassion is treating all with kindness and love." So that's a puff, not even a curveball here. One more on this front. Ego is getting lost in thoughts regarding tasks, goals, and perceived accomplishments. Came from a different angel. And then I'll go for a classic one, Albert Einstein. Our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. What comes from all that?
Well, those are all quotes that came from those sources tapping into their higher consciousness. That higher consciousness lives available to all of us. I always say, if you're a scientist, an artist, a writer, whatever, when you quiet your logic mind and you tap into the greater mind or the greater consciousness, you're genius. Like Einstein, he even admitted that his genius was intuitive, that he didn't get his answers through the logic. He knew how to play that equation game, but his answers came from sudden knowingness, intuitive knowingness. And we have to all remember that's how it really happens. If you're writing a great book, it's coming from the higher realms and it's pouring through you in ways that are surprising you as you write it. And if you're a musician or an artist, that's how it works. It gets out of your logic mind. It suddenly pours through you. It takes over you. Now you're living in the higher consciousness of intuition.
Mm. Do you think humans, adults, I'm going to make up a number here for an age, but let's say anybody over 18 who's doing adulting, do you think humans these days are more inclined to want to do listening or pay attention or acknowledge the universe, that there's a greater learning to be had that's beyond the
I think
knowing?
it's harder now for people. I do. I
Yeah.
really do believe this is the hardest time on earth for accessing higher consciousness. And the reason I believe that is because there is so much fear and anxiety here caused by technology, caused by all the things we think are so important and so wonderful about our human life right now. And even if the worst of all cases happened and the grid went down and technology collapsed, in 3 days, we would be back listening to our higher consciousness, our intuition, our higher selves, and navigating that way. We are so lost as humanity right now, and the awakening has to come from unplugging. And if we don't each personally learn to do that, I think the universe will step in and give us a universal unplugging so that we can finally tap into our true guidance, our sacred intuition.
I can relate to that. For 12 years, I've been offering people the chance to just get any answers to any questions. I don't see the questions or answers. And I've gotten, I'd say, a good 8,000, 10,000 no's, but I've gotten a good 5 or 6,000 yeses. So it's a healthy balance. Can't complain. Everything is a learning experience and helps grows your own base or
But
foundation.
everybody can get their own answers.
Yeah, that's what
They-
I'll just try to point out to folks. You get your do
yeah,
your own listening, do get your own
yeah.
answers, and so on. If you wanted to talk one more time about the knowing, let's say science is very focused on discoveries, knowing it's got to be a certain way through logos, but that's the type of knowing that really precludes possibility or is limiting, is it not?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why you can't science your way to a belief in God.
Mm,
All good things that are real here have to come from a leap of faith or trusting the heart.
mm,
And, everybody who's skeptic or cynical, they think, oh, well, you've got to prove to me in a very left brain logic way that anything exists beyond the physical. Well, I'm going to spin it a different way. Your consciousness has been showing you the invisible realms and the divine truth since you got here on earth. You just block it and deny it constantly. So what you need to do is have your own cellular experience out of your body, and whether that's a near death experience, a shared death experience, an out of body experience, however it comes to you, you will finally realize or awaken to the fact that logic doesn't know much here on earth, and cynicism is just fear. And so your leap of faith, your opening and trusting of the heart has been asked of you by every religion in different words and different ways. It is a quieting of the mind and an opening of the heart that saves us as humans.
oh, I love it. And I'm going to read a quote. This is probably Jesus around 2014, but it's compassion is here for all. A person need only be open to receive. A new consciousness emerges. Details are not so important. Love is love. What's your reaction to that?
Well, love is love. When I went to 4 years of Unity Ministry School, it was because I wanted to study really the ancient Aramaic text of the Bible and really discover who Jesus was and kind of go back and revisit it all, because I'd grown up Catholic, and those stories have been rewritten by humans, by men specifically, and translated out of the original Aramaic to where they're unrecognizable as the original texts were. And when you go back, Jesus was an enlightened teacher. He never said you can only be saved if you believe in me. And instead, his lesson, his message was the Sermon on the Mount. I give you one commandment. It's more important than any other commandment. It is to love one another. That was his gift to us. And yet, look at how that got dogmatized and rewritten. And every religion has a teacher, Buddha, Siddhartha, come in and say, we're here to feel compassion. We're here to open our hearts. We're here to love one another. And then humans come in and dogmatize it and make rules and laws out of it until it becomes a punishing experience for humans. I urge anybody listening who's been dogmatized by religion and are wounded by it or doubting themselves because of it, please remember the only commandment here is love, and that includes loving yourself.
Okay, take this with a grain of salt, but angels once said, the greatest gift is allowing, with a capital A, allowing. All is growth and change. This is frightening for some. There's nothing to do here. Slow down the doing. Instead, breathe, smile, and relax. Appreciate all. Compassion for all is life. This is also about acceptance for all. Regard others as yourself, generously and without fixation. Believe in all. It is much simpler than people think. Again, this is because this is not about thinking, but less thinking. Open yourself up to life. Speak with us, angels, be. Again, can you give us kind of a final glimpse into the Sue Frederick patented method of the way to be?
I think the most important thing in that quote you just read is about change. And this is why I love sacred numerology. It shows you all of the reinvention cycles you're having in your life so that you can remember, wow, I programmed in change as a very important part of my lifetime here, because that's how we grow. We're not supposed to stay the same person. We're not supposed to have the same beliefs, even the same personality that we start out with. So this whole earth journey is about growth and change and expansion. And when it comes at us, we get terrified. We go, oh my God, I don't know where this is taking me. And I'm afraid of bad things happening. Whereas the other point of view is, like I experienced in the hospital, where you just go, I surrender to where this is going to take me. And I trust that this change is acting in my favor for the highest good of all. And so it is.
Beautiful. And another quote from another angel. This is not about knowing, but continued learning. Few humans fully comprehend the difference here. An angel named Dale, who does say, when you go to see him, you can see him as Greg Kinnear, and from your movie, from the dentist movie, the comedy that you mentioned. He says if you don't remember who Greg Kinnear is, though, he'll do George Clooney, and that's full on seeing angels. I wanted to ask, do you have a time where you were sure that was an angel? There are probably dozens of them where you've crossed paths, or maybe you weren't
Yeah.
meant to chat, but a stranger waved hi or just held the door open for you.
No, I've been rescued by angels in the physical world, especially when I was rock climbing and in the mountains. I had visceral experiences of people showing up out of nowhere and saving my life and disappearing. So
Can you
I've
share
seen,
one story if you don't mind?
um, well, it was back in the 70s, so I'm not sure I can tell it exactly right, but I'll tell you that I was not as good of a rock climber as the mountains required that I was having to climb in. This was way before rock climbing gyms existed, and I was on a rock climbing trip in Colorado, and I went from a little tiny Missouri rock climbing experience where I was in college to suddenly being with a group of climbers in Colorado at the El Dorado Canyon, amazing world-class rock climbing cliff. And that day climbing, well, things happen on the rock face that are inexplicable, that saved me from my own mistakes. But more importantly than that, um, that night alone in this, back then, that canyon was, you could camp in there and have a tent in there. And I was there with a group of rock climbers. And of course, it was the 70s. They were all guys. And I thought, great, we're here because we're rock climbers and they honor my climbing. And it turned out that one of them wanted more from me than that. And the way I escaped that night, it was a dramatic, he weighed more than 200 pounds. I weighed about 90 pounds. And he was really coming at me physically and aggressively and pinning me down, putting his hands around my neck. And I got out of that and ran through the canyon alone that night in ways that I look back on and go, that wasn't me. There were spirits, there were angels helping me because I had agreed to stay and do some healing work for the world. And they had to work so hard to keep me alive so I could get to the point where I would be of use to human evolution. And now that I'm actually doing that work and have been for decades, they show up visibly in their light being form for me. And these were angels that showed up in October in my house and talked to me and communicated with me. And so now they show up in their real form as light beings, but I still see them taking the human role. Actually, I saw it in the hospital. I experienced that as well.
Nice. And sometimes it can just be, we'll call it heightened sparkle in someone's eyes, that they're
Yeah,
just jumping into the ball of light that's the pre-existing human, and they're just adding a 20% boost of love, or more like 1,000% boost of love in the moment. So they don't even know
yeah,
when the strangers who's a normal human is giving you a hug, you're actually getting a hug plus an angel hug.
right.
Okay, I'm gonna put Min's photo up, an angel, my guardian angel. But it was funny. There's a medical doctor, who, when she saw the photo, she's like, "That's my guardian angel." And then another woman who's a guest on the show, or was going to be a guest on the show, knew her as Mother Hawaii because she's got a little bit of Hawaiian spirituality in her. Do you mind just, you can catch, by the way, folks, you can put your hand out, feel the vibe if you want to use your whole body as the thermometer here, or barometer of love. But you can also catch an ocean wind in your hair if you want to close your eyes. What are you getting from Min as a kind of a final topic here?
The golden color of love and higher consciousness, that when we quiet the mind, we actually see and feel with our eyes closed golden light emanating from every pore of our body because we've unblocked our unconditional loving God consciousness that we are part of. And that color represents what emanates from us when we are unblocked, when we're in full alignment with our higher self and our God consciousness. So I use that color quite a bit to lift me up out of the human vibration frequency.
I'm going to do something from Celestine Prophecy. We're wrapping up here, except that it's not just in the movie. In the movie, they do it this way, showing their energy. But in India, which is more like 40 countries in one, they do it this way, and other ways. You can just see auras on your pooch, the plants, the trees. You can see it between people, and a lot of people are doing it already. I would argue everyone's already seeing all the energy and the light. Just the ego, the intellect, the psyche is just filtering it out for you. It's why, you know, when you go to get the milk at the supermarket and two guys are arguing right by the milk where you need to go, your little brain says, your little voice or your higher self says, "Hey, we'll come back. Let's go get the vegetables first anyhow." And by the time we come back, they'll be gone. Sure enough, it works out. Sue, can I use you as a guinea pig on air? This is super easy. You're already seeing, I'm sure, auras on folks half the time, if not all the time, when you want to tune in. This will just be whatever colors it is, but people get a dad joke out of this, more importantly. It'll be Bert and Ernie, Sesame Street. Bert offers Ernie ice cream. What's Ernie say? Sure, Bert. Sure, Bert. And you'll see a little filament of light between my fingers.
Yeah,
And what are you seeing?
I've done that since I was in high school. Are you kidding me? That's just how people in teenage years used to play with, doing weird tricks. But yeah, you can always see that light, that glow, even the cord in that kind of illusion there. And
And,
I mean, it's not an illusion, it's real.
yeah, what are you seeing? What color?
It's a little white piece that whenever we even put our fingers or our hands next to each other, it's like a spark of energy, electricity that we get within our own aura, our own soul body. When I was in high school, we would go around doing the trick. What do you see in between my fingers? And there would be a little perfect pill-shaped white entity there that everybody could see, even my crazy high school girlfriends in the South in Alabama in the 60s.
And for folks at home doing it with a friend, a twin sister, you guys are getting along, you owned it solo first. You can also ask an angel to make a heart out of that light, or you'll get a little hummingbird, or you can go really crazy and get even bigger universal designs out of light. Sue, is there anything else you want to leave us with for the show?
No, please visit my website, SueFrederick.com, and join our classes. We have so much fun in the classes, including the Angelic Ministry Ascension Program that's ongoing. And You'll meet an amazing community of people and really get clear on your angelic role on this earth life.
Well, Sue Frederick, it's been wonderful to have you on Angels, Positivity, and Love. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.